Hello everybody and welcome back to A Taste of Home Season 2. I'm Chef Bruce and I'll be cooking up a couple of Lenten recipes for y'all. We're gonna start off with a simple eggplant, mushroom, and tofu dish. We have a baked fish, and of course we're gonna end it off with a pasta dish. So it's gonna be a adobong pusit pasta, which is gonna be really good. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and roll into it. I'm gonna start off with the vegetables because it takes a lot of prep time. I have some really nice eggplants now. What you have to do is you have to make sure that when you do buy eggplants now, especially if it's rainy, to cut into it, see there's no worms in it. So if there's any worms, just pick them out, okay? So during rainy season, you will get worms in the eggplant. That's totally okay. Now, we're gonna be using Yamamori soy sauce for this because I find it to be extremely good and it has a good flavor profile that balances out this dish. So I'm gonna go ahead by prepping my eggplant first. I'll grab a bowl. Okay. So with eggplant, just kind of peel everything off. That way you don't waste it. You can peel the heads off. Oops, just don't put in the oil. And then you can see where you're gonna cut because that's usable meat. So I'll just put everything aside so I can clear my board. I cut it right about here. And again, during rainy season, I do like to open them up. So I'm gonna cut them in about that big of a size and just kind of crack them open to make sure there's no dark spots. Now, if there are dark spots, just dig through it and you can see that there might be a little worm in it, and that's okay. Now, normally, you would store this in water so that way it doesn't discolor because eggplants do oxidize, but I'm gonna be cooking this right away, so I'm not gonna do that. So I'm gonna continue prepping out my eggplants. With me today, I have Ian. Ian is, as you all know, my sous chef. So he is going to start frying these bad boys up for me while I prep the rest of the other ingredients. There you go. So that's a worm. So that's why I like to cut it this way so I can see it. Now, just you take your knife and cut into it, and once it's clear, then you're all right. And don't freak out about it. It's normal. It's nature. And I mean, I've eaten a few worms in my life as well, and nothing happened to me. But it's hard to kind of get through if you feed that to a guest or a customer. They will complain. But there's really nothing wrong with a worm. Fry ka na, bro. Yep. Just don't drop it like what Ian did. And take your time with it. Open them up. And we're actually doing pretty good. I thought there would be more worms than what I have now. So that's a good thing. There you go. That's a classic example of a wormy one. So please don't stress about it, just remove them. And what I used to do is I had a cook who hated worms. So I would collect all the worms and I would leave it on his cutting board. Sino ba si Arnel, di ba? He's a big guy, maybe like 5'8", big man, sorry. And just give him a worm and he turns into a little girl. And normally, if you look at the eggplant and if you see that little indentation, there's probably gonna be a worm there. Oh, this one didn't. All right, sweet. Perfect. So I have all my eggplant nice and cut. Now the thing is, when you cook eggplant, they kind of swell up and they kind of collapse on themselves. So this is going to really kind of shrink down to by half. So that's why you want to kind of go over than what you actually need. So it looks nice on the plate. Always clean your board. Your workstation has to always be clean. All right, so while Ian is doing this, I'm going to prep the rest of the ingredients. I'm going to do things that need a little bit more intricate kind of work. So I have here king oyster mushrooms. And all you have to do is just remove the bottom. And these are just like the spores where it kind of grows out of. Remove that. Whoops. Let me clean my area. Okay. And what I like to do is just cut them in half, because these are going to be not only for flavor, they're going to be part of my presentation as well. So I just cut them lengthwise, straight down, like so, and I score them. Okay, so by scoring them, you allow it to get penetrated with flavor. And I'm going to pan sear this with a little bit of butter so it gets nice and browned. Now when you're cooking, take your time. No need to rush, because things like this cook extremely fast. And you want to make sure that since it is like eggplant and mushroom, you want to make sure the value for money is there, especially when you're making it for someone, for a paying client, for your loving family. And you don't want it to look boring. I mean, if they're meat eaters and you have to give them something like vegetables as their sacrifice for Lent season, you want to make sure that it's kind of good and it looks nice. So when you do eat this, after we sear it up, it's almost going to taste like meat, because it's really flavorful. So a lot of those like vegans, they use mushrooms to kind of give that meat flavor, because mushrooms do have a lot of umami. All right. Now I'm going to be using the Yamamori extra soy sauce in this. Also the sushi, the Yamamori sushi sauce. The reason for it is the sushi sauce is almost like a Japanese shoyu that has like a flavor. It's been seasoned. So I'm going to use that seasoning in my dish to kind of give it more flavor. Okay, so I have my mushrooms here. I'll grab a bowl. How's it look, Ian? All right. So this is ready. I have here my other mushrooms. So I'm using shiitakes. Now the stems can be a bit chewy, so just pick them off. You just got to give it like a little twist and it comes right off. Thank you, Ian. Now if they're stubborn like that, just use a knife and cut right through it. So what we're doing is, but if it's soft like that, that's okay. I'll just knob that off. But sometimes you can get them that are really barky, so it's almost like wood. You have to remove those. Now, whenever I do my recipes, I always try to build flavor. I start off with a good base and I build flavor with it. So what I'm doing now is I know the flavor profile of this mushroom is going to enhance my eggplant dish. So I do have a good quality soy sauce that I'll be using. And now I just have to add to it to kind of build more flavor levels or layers as we go on and we proceed through the dish. This needs to be cut. Okay. So now we're just going to give it a really quick slice. And whenever you do cooking, you want to make sure that you have texture, sizes, so it doesn't look too bare. And it does have a little bit of like bite to it. So since my eggplants are nice and big, and so is my king mushrooms, king oysters, I'm going to cut this slightly smaller. Perfect. So I have my mushrooms done. I'll cut up my aromatics next. Again, I always clean my board. Now a clean board, make sure that everything else is clean. And you want to make sure that you're always sanitized, especially now with our crisis that we have. All right, so I'm going to get about 3 or 4 cloves of garlic. Now all you have to do is just press it against the board. If it's stubborn, then open them up. This looks good. So I normally just cut off the root part. All right, so our garlic is nicely peeled, and we're just going to chop it up real quick. Or actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait because I know that garlic is sticky, so I'm going to peel all the rest of my ingredients before I start chopping. So I don't need all this ginger. I only need about that much, and the best thing to use is a spoon to actually peel the ginger. Now just use a really cheap spoon, and the reason why I say cheap spoon is because normally it's thin and it helps you get into the skin and all the cracks and crevices. If you use an expensive spoon, normally it's a bit thicker and you won't be able to get into those cracks. So you can get this somewhere for like a pack of 12 for 25 pesos, 35 pesos. All right, so we're just going to peel off all the skin. Now, if you do get a little bit of skin on it still when you're actually cutting it, it's okay. Don't worry. The only difference is you might turn your whatever a bit darker, so your sauce or something might slightly be dark because of it. Other than that, there's no real flavor problem. Unless it's really dirty, then you add dirt to your dish, which is not nice. So I do have a little bit. I'm going to knob that off. I'm good with that. I have here an onion. And again, I don't need all of it. Just cut that in half. Okay. So we're going to peel it. And then we're going to go ahead and give this one last clean. Okay, so basically what I normally do whenever I do my aromats is I always start with my garlic first because it's kind of sticky. When you do cut into it, it does get sticky. And I end with my onion because my onion is a bit wet and it kind of cleans everything up. You'll see what I mean. So there's no special way with cutting garlic. We're just going to rough chop it. If you want to use a food processor, you can. And what I used to do in my house, or still do actually, if I get a good deal on garlic, I'll buy a whole lot, and then I normally chop it up in a food processor, and then I store it in oil and keep it in my refrigerator. That way when I need it, I don't have to always cut garlic all the time. And if you have the machines, use them. So we're gonna give this a really, really rough chop. Doesn't have to be too fine. So again, when you are chopping, I did discuss this before, 4 fingers on the blade, keep it to the first segment, and keep your thumb tucked under your hand. That way you don't cut your thumb or any of your fingers. And you can take control of the knife and the way it moves. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm gonna give my hand a quick rinse. Thank you, bro. Now I'm gonna go ahead and cut my ginger as well. But my ginger, I'm gonna leave it kind of chunky so I can pick it out. And people that don't like it, they can always avoid it and they know it's there, they can see it. Okay, so I'm kind of happy with that. And what I'm just gonna do is give it a quick smash. That way I release the flavors. The essential oils. And then it's big enough so that if they don't like it, they can avoid it or pick it out. All right, so for my onions, it's just a really quick slice. All right, so now all my ingredients are all cut except for my tofu, and then we can actually go and rock and roll. All right, so I'm gonna get another board really quickly for my tofu. Now, even though this is vegetable based, I don't like mixing it on my board. Thank you, brother. Put that there. Let me clean my board a bit. Okay. Because as you all know, I love my booze. Don't like getting it dirty. Now, the easiest way to do this is hold your knife straight across, and then we're gonna push it straight through. So just like that, you know where halfway mark is, hold the other side and just push it. Now don't push it hard so you don't cut into your hand. When you feel the knife stop, and then we're gonna do the same thing, just we know that this is gonna be the size all the way through. So I normally cut it by 4 and again by 4. Okay, now with this tofu, since Ian's on the fryer, I'm gonna season my flour. I just have regular AP flour, all-purpose flour. We season this with salt and cracked black pepper. Then we just kind of give it a toss. All right. Then we go straight in with the tofu. And then I hand this off to Ian and he's gonna fry it. All right. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna saute all my aromats. I'm gonna add in my mushrooms to that. That way when you have the beautiful caramelization and browning of the mushrooms, the umami really boosts. You get a really good flavor from the mushrooms. Okay, so to this, I am gonna add a little bit of butter to my oil. So right now I'm using the Arla unsalted butter. And you don't have to use a lot, just 3 is enough. And what I like to do is I like to kind of let it melt into the oil Once it starts to froth, then I throw everything into it. If you want to develop flavor, you have to make sure that your oil is hot enough before you throw in your ingredients, because instead of sauteing it, you just end up sweating it. And you're not going to get that much of a flavor profile. Although there is a use for sweating, you do sweat things down, but for this particular dish, I want to saute it. Okay. So my butter is nice and frothy. I'm going to drop in my onions. Grab this. Get that nice and hot. So what I'm waiting for is for the onions to kind of cook down a little bit. Not all the way, but I want it to be cooked down enough so when I add my garlic, the garlic is going to brown and the onions are going to burn. Now the reason for it is, if I put my garlic in first, before my onions get browned enough, the garlic is going to be burned. So you have to kind of play with your timing when you do the cooking process so that you don't burn anything. And burnt garlic is really bad because it makes it taste kind of bitter and it's not fun. And once you burn garlic, you really can't do anything else to salvage it. You have to start over. Okay, so I'm happy with where my onions are now. I'm going to add in my ginger so it releases the aroma, and I'm going to go in with my garlic. Okay, so I can smell the onions, I can smell the garlic, I can smell the ginger. So it kind of smells like a start of maybe like an Indian dish, but we're gonna actually flip this and turn this into a nice Asian kind of Chinese inspired dish. All right, so now my garlic is starting to brown. So I'm going to add in my mushrooms. So when it kind of has that brown tinge to it, just like that, I'm going to add in my mushrooms. All right. Now, all that oil and butter is just going to get absorbed in by the mushrooms. And the thing with mushrooms are they're pretty much like 80% water, if not more. So what happens is you steam out the moisture and it gets nice and flavorful. Now another trick is you add a little bit of salt to the saute. And the salt is going to help draw out the moisture of the mushrooms and it browns a whole lot better. So we're just going to keep tossing it. Now my pan is pretty hot. My stove isn't really working with me, but my pan is hot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to knob in a little bit of butter. And I know it's going to go quick because it's smoking hot. I'll add just a bit of oil. I'll knob in some butter. And I'm using a cast iron pan because I want it to retain that heat. And then to this, I'm going to season the pan with a little bit of salt. And I drop in my king oyster mushrooms. So we're almost treating the mushrooms like a steak. All right. That looks good. And don't overcrowd your pan. If you overcrowd your pan, you drop the heat, and what happens is you end up steaming it instead of searing it. Now with my mushrooms here, what I'm doing is I'm just letting it get happy, and I'm also browning it as well. So if you keep flipping it, you're not going to get those nice sear marks on the mushrooms. So just to kind of let it be, let it do its thing. You're gonna see that it's starting to get more wet and shiny. That's a good thing. All right. So I shall I'm gonna let that go for maybe another, I don't know, minute or so. Then I'm gonna deglaze my pan with the soy sauce. And then I'm gonna cover it with chicken stock. And then we're actually gonna bring everything together. Just needs a little bit longer. So as you can see, you're really starting to get a whole lot of color in that. And don't be afraid, because the more color we do give it, the more flavorful it's going to become. I mean, brown it, don't burn it. You burn it, then you're pretty much starting all over. All right, so that's what we want for the king oysters. We want that nice browning, kind of toasted color. That's beautiful. Just like that. Now what I do is I would lower my heat. I knob in a little bit more butter. You can add a bit of stock or water. And you want to lift all the flavor off the pan. And what happens is that steam cooks the mushrooms through. I'm going to add a little bit of soy sauce to this. I'm using the Yamamori extra soy sauce. And the reason for it is I want kind of like a stronger kind of salty umami. And you'll see it has a really rich kind of caramel color when we're done cooking it. And we just kind of spoon that on. We let the residual heat cook that through. So the butter, the soy sauce, and the stock kind of makes a sauce out of it that's really, really nice. I'm going to add a little bit more butter. So I'm actually stoked because this cast iron pan is really good. And I had to season it earlier. All right, so my mushrooms are nice. I got some really good toasty bits. I'm going to deglaze the pan now with some Yamamori extra soy sauce. So what I'm doing now is I'm lifting up all that flavor, all the caramelization, and I have here some Yamamori sushi and sashimi sauce. This will give it the sweetness that I want. Okay, to this I'm going to add a little bit of brown sugar. Smells awesome. I'm going to cover this now with some chicken stock. And then to this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my eggplant and my tofu to it. So I have my cooked eggplant here that goes in. And then we add the tofu when this is done, and then we're going to thicken it up. And we're pretty much ready to plate. Beautiful. Now, a lot of mushrooms you could pretty much eat raw, but not all of them, especially if you forage them wildly or in the wild. So you have to kind of make sure you know what you're doing when you do go for mushrooms. And then a good rule of thumb is if you're unsure, if you can eat them raw, just cook them. Okay, so don't take the chance. Just cook them through. And trust me, don't eat mushrooms that you don't know. Okay, that's the worst thing you can do. So if you're not sure of it, just go to the store and buy them, and always cook them through. If you're brave enough to actually go out in the wild and farm for them, or what do you call it again, forage for them, then make sure you have an expert with you who knows what they're doing so that you can go ahead and safely eat the mushrooms. All right, so I have my eggplant ready. I have my slurry here. So I'm just using basic cornstarch and water slurry to thicken up my sauce. My lovely king oysters are nice. My slurry is ready. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to taste my sauce really quickly, so I know if I have to adjust the seasoning with anything. That's really good, but it needs a little bit more sugar. So I'm going to add my sugar to that. Okay. And please don't be afraid to taste. You have to taste. Whenever I do competitions and I judge, if the group doesn't taste, they automatically fail for me, because if they don't know what it tastes like, they're not sure of it, and they give it to me and it's under seasoned, it really pisses me off. So taste as you go. This looks about right. Let me give it another quick taste. Okay, that's where I want it to be.
1 minute, sir.
I have 1 minute on that. Okay, so while that's working, I'm gonna get ready for my actual plate up, because I know I'm almost there. Let me clear my workstation. And it's always important that you do clean your workstation as you go. That's another thing that I always look for in new cooks. If they're dirty, pisses me off. They normally don't get hired. But if they're nice and clean and their work area is good, then I know that they can actually cook well and their hygiene is good. Right. So I have my service plate. I'm gonna get my garnish ready. Ian, pena cilantro at spring onions, bro. That looks about right. All right, good. So I have here my eggplant dish. And what I like to do is just kind of stir everything in. Oops. And that one wanted to go home. So I do find it to be slightly too thin. So I'm going to go ahead and thicken this up. And the best way to thicken it up is just with a little bit of cornstarch slurry. Doesn't take a lot. Give that a good stir in. All right. I'll give it one final taste. That's it. So that's really where I want it to be. And all we have to do now is plate everything up. Okay, so like I said before, there's really no wrong or right way of plating. Wherever it falls, it falls. Don't stress. I mean, if I was cooking in a restaurant, then yeah, maybe I would think about it a bit more. But since you guys are going to be cooking at home and this is kind of like a home recipe, don't really worry about it. So we want to kind of make sure that we have enough tofu, enough mushrooms inside. Then we just get a paper towel, clean up the plate. I'll grab my king mushrooms as well from behind me. Thank you, Ian. A lot of people ask me, why do you always wipe your plates? Because it shows how well you actually take pride in what you do. You don't want to serve a plate that has like dirty edges and all that stuff. It's really bad. It just looks bad in general. So as much as possible, keep your plates as clean as you can so that when you do have them and you do present them, they look really nice. So I have my lovely king oysters. I do love cilantro in this, and to me it just kind of screams Asian because of the flavor profile. So we're gonna add a little bit of cilantro so people know it's there. And try not to cover up all your beautiful mushrooms. Then I will just cut this on a bias really quickly. And like I said, where it falls, it falls. Don't stress about it. We could probably add chili to this, but you know, why not? So here we have it. We have our braised eggplant with mushrooms and tofu. So what I'm gonna do now is I am going to clean up really quickly and I'm gonna get started with my baked fish. Okay, so yeah, take a look at that. All right, so now we're back and I'm gonna make two dishes kind of like simultaneously. I have a pompano here that I'm gonna go ahead and prep. I'm also gonna do my squid as well. So the reason why I chose pompano, it is a really good firm flesh fish and it's nice and white. Only thing I did to it was I gutted it, so I removed the guts, but other than that, I leave the fins on, I remove the gills, and I keep it ready for what I wanna do to it. So again, I always make sure that my board is nice and clean. I don't dirty my wood board because it's hard to clean that. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna marinate this with Yamamori choice soy sauce. And what I do is I just normally score it. So if this is the head, I kind of pull it from head to tail. So just a kind of like a light score. Again, head to tail. Now, what I'm going to do to this is I'm going to add some lemon and tarragon to it. So I just top and tail the lemon. And I'm going to cut kind of thick slices, like so. And I'm going to stuff the cavity of the pompano. Let me flip it so you can see. Just pop it in. Okay. And I'm going to add some tarragon to this. And tarragon has kind of like a almost anise-like flavor, like a licorice or almost like a sarsi kind of flavor, if you would. But it's very more anisey and it's really good with fish. We're gonna pop that into the cavity. Now I'm not gonna season this with salt and pepper. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add Yamamori choice soy sauce because it does have enough salt in it and it does give a nice sweet flavor profile. Now this dish is nothing like a Japanese dish. This is probably pretty much a Western dish. But we're gonna use the sauce to kind of help us achieve what we wanna do with the roasted fish. Now, just pop it onto a plate again, like so. Wipe my hands. And I'm going to use the Yamamori choice. I normally use extra when I do cooking, but when I do marination, I use the choice. And we're just going to cover it. Make sure that everything is nice. I open up the slits that I made and I let it sit there for about 10 to 15 minutes. I do have lemon inside. I do have soy sauce. If you let it sit for too long, what happens is it kind of cooks the meat and it gets overly salty. So you have to make sure your timing is critical. Okay, your timing is good. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in the chiller. I'll call Ian to put this in the chiller for me. Just cover it with plastic, bro. Yeah, sure. We're gonna cover it with plastic and pop into the chiller. Right, so I'm happy with that. I'm gonna wash my hands really quickly and then I'm gonna go on to the next step. Okay. So my water there is boiling. I have here just water and salt. I'm not gonna peel the potatoes, but I did wash them. And if you have one of those finger brushes you use for cleaning your fingernails when you're washing your hands, use that to actually brush the skins of the potatoes because they can be really, really dirty. But I kind of want the skins. It does give a nice kind of earthy flavor profile. So I'm just gonna cut this into little wedges. And when you cut them into wedges, it'll help act like a bed for my fish later. But what I'm doing is, since it only takes about 15 minutes to cook my fish, I'm going to parboil my potatoes. And I want to add a bit of salt to the water so that the water or the salt penetrates into the potato. And I always use unsalted butter when I cook. That way I can control the amount of salt inside. This potato looks a little bit funky, so I won't use that. Bro, can I get another potato, please? Okay. So I'm good. I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in to the boiling water. And I'm gonna give that like about 10 minutes. And I know that when I'm done prepping my squid, everything else is gonna be ready. Okay, so I'm gonna get my squid now. And I change my board. Always change your board. And here we have some squid tubes. Okay, so I got it in the market, and unfortunately the squid sacks did burst, but it's okay. You're gonna see that the meat of the squid will be kind of purplish, but don't worry, that's totally fine. So what we do is we just get the squid tube like so, and you pull it apart until you release the guts. We have here the feather. You just kind of break it and you pull it straight out and it looks like a piece of plastic. That's what we don't need. And then we have here the wings. You just hold the wing or hold the tube and the wing and you peel it straight out and you pull it straight down. So we're gonna release the membrane that's surrounding the tube. This is its skin, its camouflage that it uses. And I cut that off. Now to this, I kind of look, and we have the ink sac right here. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna cut right below the ink sac, and then you're gonna lift the ink sac to where there's a little skin. And you just pull that out. Don't cut the sac, you cut the skin, okay? Now if you do it right, the ink sac won't burst on you, just like that. Now, everything else is good. We do have a beak inside this. So if you open the mouth of the squid, you push where in between the eyes and you pull out that little beak. So it looks like this, okay? So it does look like a bird's beak, so we don't eat that because you can kind of hurt your mouth or your lip. And then some people don't eat the eyes, but I do. So I'm happy with all of this stuff, the wings and all that. I'm just gonna chop it up really quickly, and I'm gonna separate it into this bowl, and I'm gonna keep the sacks into another bowl. Just like that. So my egg sack, my head, now I have my tube. This looks like it's preggy, so we have some eggs in there. This is really good stuff. I'm gonna keep that with the heads as well. Now, what we have here is the tube itself. There's like a little fold in it. I'm gonna wash this so you can see it. So if you look at it, there's a little fold right there. It's a natural curve or a fold in the squid. Just hold that straight flat on your board, run your knife all the way to the end of the tip, and pull it straight through that little cut, that little crease, okay? Now you're open. You can scrape that off. Put that in that bowl. And with a knife, we're gonna gently score it, but we're not going to cut it all the way through. Now what's going to happen here is during the presentation process, it's going to curl up on us and it's going to show this beautiful honeycomb kind of look to it. Now I'm not cutting all the way through so that you can see that we do have little scores in it. The more even that you cut it, the better your presentation is going to be. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Jasper. And Jasper is going to go ahead and clean this for me. Can I have a plate, bro? Oh, here. And then we're going to go ahead and keep this beautiful cleaned squid tubes, and then we're going to separate everything up, and then we're going to actually start cooking everything. All right, so I'll hand this off to Jasper, and I'll leave a sample for you guys to see here. All right. Jess, you're up. All right, bro. I'm gonna wash my hands really quickly, then I'm gonna get started with everything else. Okay. So whenever you do cook and you do plan on it, make sure that you kind of think about how your plate is going to be, what the start and what the end is going to be. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So I know I have my fish is marinating, my potatoes are boiling, I have my squid working, and then what I'm going to do now is all my other mise en place so that when everything is done, I just have to build it all up. Okay, so I'm going to grab the rest of the stuff for my baked fish. So I'm gonna just finish cutting my little lemon into wedges or into little segments. I have an onion here. Now, again, what I'm doing now is I'm making 3 dishes that are totally not Japanese. The first one was kind of Chinesey, definitely Asian, and this one is kind of Western with the fish, and my last one is going to be Filipino-ish because it's going to be adobong pusit. Okay. Now that's the beauty about Yamamori soy sauce. It's not always going to be Japanese. If people have this misconception that if you're using a Japanese ingredient, you have to make Japanese dishes. I mean, it's good if you do, but you don't always have to. So I'm just rough cutting all my vegetables for my fish to the size where I know it's going to get cooked by the time my fish is done. So that's why I'm planning ahead by pre-cooking my potatoes so that it's nice and soft, parboiled before I actually add it to the oven so it cooks well. Okay. Yeah. And I love the flavor of parsley as an ingredient, not just a garnish. I'm not going to chop it up extremely fine. I'm going to kind of leave it chunky. And I'm going to use it as a flavoring agent as well. I have here some leeks that I'm just going to rough chop as well. And I have some onions. Just remember, when you do cook, you want to make sure that everything cooks at the same time so you don't have anything raw when everything else is done. All right. That looks good. So what I have here is my Pyrex dish. To this dish, I'm going to add my potatoes that are parboiled. Thank you, Ian. So I have here some beautifully parboiled potatoes. I'm going to add some butter to this. Excuse me, Jasper. Gotta hurry up, bro. And again, I'm using the Arla unsalted butter. You know, again, there's no real wrong way with like using salted or unsalted butter, but I prefer unsalted so I can control my salt. I'm going to add some Italian seasoning, just a bunch of dried herbs. Then I'm going to toss in the vegetables that I already cut. Give that a really quick toss. Okay. And we're going to season this with cracked black pepper. I'm not going to add salt because there is soy sauce on my fish. I'm going to also add some lemon just for a little bit of citrus notes to it and a bit of freshness. So if you look at that, it's extremely colorful and it smells fantastic. Ian, can I have my fish, please? All right. So my pompano is nice and marinated. If you can see right here, I'm not sure if the camera can get it, the fish is kind of whitened or kind of got opaque. The reason for it is that lemon is actually cooking the flesh of the fish, kind of like kilawin or kinilaw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this now so that it doesn't overcook, because if we do cook the fish like that, what happens is that fish becomes a bit cottony. It doesn't have a really good texture in the mouth. So we want it to kind of give it some flavor and some aroma, but we don't want it to cook it. Okay. So I prop that right on top and I add the beautiful soy sauce that goes right on top of the fish. Perfect. Behind. Looking good, brother. Okay, so my fish is nice and done. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to cover it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit of butter on top of the fish to help it kind of not stick to the aluminum foil. And that butter is really going to just add so much more flavor to the fish. All right. Thank you, bro. So you want to get nice and tight. So what happens is it acts like a steaming chamber for the fish, but we don't want it to kind of like explode, so we just pop 2 vent holes on either side so that some of the steam can escape. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and pop this into the oven, and we're gonna cook this for about 15 to 18 minutes. This goes into about a 190-degree oven. Okay, so while that's cooking, we're gonna go ahead and prep the remaining ingredients for our pasta. All right, so we have the fish baking. What I'm gonna do now is get all my ingredients ready for the pasta. I put back on the stove some water. I'm gonna add some salt to this. I'm gonna add 1 bay leaf, and I'm gonna add some aromatics as well. So I'm gonna add some garlic and some onion to that. The reason for it is this is gonna be my poaching liquid for my squid tubes. Yeah, just keep it really, really simple. I just want the flavor of the onions and garlic to come out into the water, but I don't want to cook it, or it's not going to be part of my ingredient at the end. So it's almost like a court bouillon. Okay. Now I just need about that much. That goes in there. We bring that to a boil, and when that boils, it's going to be ready for our squid. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and now make up or do my mise en place for the pasta itself. I have here onion, garlic, and tomatoes. And a lot of you are probably thinking why I'm putting tomatoes into my pasta sauce. It's because I like the flavor that it's going to give. And you won't really tell that there's tomatoes in the pasta unless I put it on as a garnish. So we're going to go ahead and take off the skins again. Now, this doesn't necessarily need to be a finely chopped garlic. It could be pretty much whatever cut you want it to be, rough or whatever. The reason for it is we're going to blend everything up. So I just want to make sure that I do develop flavor in it and it cooks out well. And I have here tomatoes. Okay, so again, I start off with the sticky one, which would be the garlic. I have my tomatoes. And you can cut it any which way you like. I chose to kind of slice it up. And then with the onions. Okay, so I have my onions here, I have my tomatoes, and I have my garlic. We're going to go ahead and get that ready for our saute. All right. Yes, you can walk natin. Okay, so I'm going to move this to the side for now. Get that going. And then I'm going to go ahead and saute up all my ingredients to kind of build the flavor. Okay. So I have here my saute pan, and I'm going to do again what I did earlier by adding oil to the pan. Send your oil, brother. I'm going to get the pan nice and hot. I'm going to add my oil to the pan, get that nice and hot, and add all my aromatics to it. Thank you, bro. So for this, I'll be using the Yamamori extra soy sauce. And so it is going to be a base like an adobo. So it's pretty much some type of acid and some type of saltiness. I will be using the Yamamori Extra because it has slightly a sweeter flavor profile to it, and I like that for this. So again, I'm using a Japanese ingredient and making something Filipino-ish. And normally, I always make dishes that have different starches. So first, we can eat it with rice, the braised eggplant with tofu and mushrooms. The second dish, we're gonna eat it with potatoes. So it's gonna be a roasted potato and a baked fish. And this one is gonna be a pasta. So as you can see, we kind of play with it and showing you that you can do a lot with your dishes. Okay, so my pan is getting nice and hot. I add my oil in. Perfect. Give it a quick swirl. And I want to get my oil kind of smoking, so I'm going to wait for it to get hot again. Okay, we go in with the onions. Get that nice and cooked. And I like adding a bit of salt. A pinch of salt. This kind of helps me release the oil from, or sorry, the water from the onions, and it browns a whole lot better. All right, so my onions are starting to brown. I'll add in my tomatoes and my garlic. Now I'm going to cook this down for about 3 minutes, and what's going to happen is the tomatoes are going to release all their moisture, and it's going to turn into kind of like a paste. And when that happens, I know that it has achieved what I want. It releases all its moisture, and that umami is going to be intensified. How you doing, brother? Okay, so we just keep stirring this, and we break down the tomatoes to kind of release its moisture, and we just keep sauteing. You'll notice what's going to happen in the pan is the pan is going to start to kind of get dry, and you're going to see that it's starting to stick to it. That's totally okay. If you wanted to, you can add a little bit of pasta water to that. That's totally cool. But we're going to let this kind of go down more. So whenever you do cook again, you have to think about building flavors, building layers. You want to start off with good ingredients and a good ingredient itself. So I know I'm using a good soy sauce product. I'm happy with that. I'm using the Yamamori Extra for this. And I also know that my vegetables are good. I'm using nice ripe tomatoes. So I know that in the end, it's going to be really, really nice. You cannot really rush things. And if you try to rush things and push it, the flavor won't really be developed, and it won't be what it should be. So a really good recipe or a really good dish takes time and really, really good ingredients. Now, I'm not saying you got to get like a foie gras and Wagyu beef and all that stuff to actually do it. You can pretty much make it with any ingredient you want, but just get the best ingredient that you can find. Like this, I'm using a nice ripe tomato. I'm not using a green tomato. So you have to kind of see the way it works, and you want to pick the best that you can so it doesn't compromise your flavor. If I use the green tomato, I won't be able to achieve what I'm going to try to achieve right now. So as you can see, it's starting to dry now. It's starting to brown. That's what we want. How am I with my squid chunks? Are they good? Can I have it then? So I have my squid chunks. So these are the heads and the insides and the wings. I'm going to add that to the pan now. This smells fantastic. I'm going to add now my bay leaves to this. I'm going to deglaze my pan with the vinegar. So I'm going to let that go and cook out for a little bit, and I'm not going to touch it. Now the best way to go is when the vinegar is not kind of choky or makes you want to cough, then you're good to proceed to the next step. So always smell it, and if you kind of have to flinch, then it's not yet ready. Okay, I'm also going to add squid ink to this. So I wasn't sure if I can get the sacks out correctly, so I have some squid ink that you can find in the store. I'm going to use this and some of the sacks that Ian pulled out as well. A little bit more. So sushi, my extra. All right, so now I can smell it without choking. I know that this is ready. I'm going to now add my soy sauce to this. Okay. And I'm going to also add my squid ink. Now, yes, this is squid ink, so please try not to get it on your beautiful chef whites because it's going to be really hard to get off. All right. So what I'm going to do now is give this a really quick stir. I'm going to add just a little bit of stock to this, about half a cup. And I'm going to let this simmer for about 5 to 10 minutes. And what happens is it kind of helps the squid kind of absorb the flavor. It cooks out any of the other ingredients that need to be cooked. So what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the sauce by half. And once it's reduced by half, then we know that the flavor is intensified and it's perfectly cooked to the way we want it. Now I'm going to go ahead and start up my pasta water again. So this is just salted water. I have to make sure my lovely stove works with me. If not, I'm just going to hold it. So the reason why I started off my sauce ahead of time is because there's a saying that the pasta waits for nothing. So I know that this is going to take about 10 minutes to cook before I have to build everything up. And the pasta is going to take about 5 minutes to cook. So by the time my water comes to boil and it's ready to accept the pasta, this is already halfway cooked. And when this is finally cooked, my sauce is going to be done. So it's all about timing. Right, so my sauce has been reduced by about half. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove the bay leaves. Because the bay leaves are good. They extracted all their flavor. And just remember how many you put in. Since I have 2, I removed 2. I know I'm good. Okay. So to this, I'm going to hand this off to Ian. And what we're going to do is we're going to blend this up in a blender so that we get this nice and fine. Okay, Ian, pa-blend na lang, bro. I'll put this down there. While that's blending, I'm going to get my pasta water ready. I have my other poaching liquid ready as well. And whenever you cook pasta, you have to make sure that your water is as salty as the sea. So if you ever went to the beach and you accidentally got water in your mouth, That's the way the pasta water should be. If it's not like that, then it's not enough salt. Because what happens is if you add pasta that you didn't season to a sauce that's already seasoned, it's going to make the sauce kind of bland. Okay, so what we did with that is we blended up the sauce itself. So we're kind of turning it into almost like a ragu, if you would. But we want to make sure that the flavor of the squid is all over the sauce and you get bits of chunks of meat when you actually eat it. Now my pasta water is in a roiling boil. We drop it in and you want to push it down so that it stays into the water and it cooks all at the same time. Just like so. Okay, so this is going to take about 7 minutes. And the best thing to do is always follow the cooking instructions on the package because they tested their pasta and they know how long it takes to become al dente. Where's my tongs? Or another way to do it, is this it, bro? All right. Or another way to do it is just kind of test it every time, pull it out, and if you like it at the way it is, then you're good. So here I have my beautiful sauce. So as you can see, it's nice and chunky and it is thick. I'm going to taste a little bit of it. That's on point. I like exactly where it is, so I'm not going to do anything to it. Thank you, bro. Now I do apologize since I did taste it. There might be ink in my mouth, but you always have to taste it, and I really do like it. Okay, so I'm going to get my garnish ready now for this, and I'm going to use maybe some cherry tomatoes that I'm going to saute really quickly. And roasted garlic would be really, really nice in this. So we have here some beautifully roasted garlic. The best way to do it is just cut off the top, drizzle with a bit of oil, wrap it in foil, and then you're good. And all you do is just kind of coax out the garlic so it comes out nice and whole. And don't kind of be afraid of it because this garlic isn't spicy anymore. It becomes extremely sweet. So it's almost like garlic candy. Thank you, brother. Can you char that for me? So this is almost like a garlic candy. It's so good. I like eating this on bread. Now, if you overcook the garlic, what happens is it becomes extremely hard, but you want it to be almost like custardy and creamy like. That's what gives it the best flavor. Okay. So my sauce has been blended up really nicely. I'm going to add some Arla unsalted butter to this. And I'm going to let that kind of melt into the sauce. It's just going to give it a whole new depth of richness. And they call this a Monte au beurre. You want to add the butter in last, and you want to kind of get it nice and thick. I'm not going to actually add this to the heat anymore because I have enough heat from my pasta when it's cooked to warm this dish through. So I'm just kind of giving a little bit of love of butter to this sauce. Okay, So I have my garlic ready. My pasta should almost be done. How's the fish, brother? Okay, my pasta should be another 2 minutes. I have my water here nice and boiling. I have my squid. And then what we're going to do is we're going to flash blanch the squid in the water. Now the reason why I kept it separate is so that people can actually see the squid when they're actually eating the pasta. If I actually cook the squid in here, what happens, it kind of drowns out and you don't know if you're eating just squid ink or actually squid itself. So this way people know that they do have the squid there, they can eat it, and it's going to look really, really nice. All right. Another minute. A beautiful buttery sauce. Do you like eating squid ink, bro? Do you like eating squid ink pasta? Oh, you're gonna love this, man. Even like this sauce now, you get so much squid flavor because we blended it. So it's gonna have that really kind of in-depth squiddy taste. All right, ready? Okay, so my pasta is fully cooked. It's nice and al dente, and the best way to do it is you want to hold your pasta up, kind of hold it. If it's smiling at you and it's not breaking, you know it's fully cooked or it's al dente. If it snaps on you like this, then it's overcooked. So make sure that you always check your pasta so that you don't overcook it. Perfect. All right. Now, I've noticed that here in the Philippines, they don't really like it al dente. They kind of like it soft. So if that's what your clientele wants, then cook it fully through. You don't always have to do it the way I'm doing it, but I prefer my pasta al dente. Okay, so from the pot, straight into the sauce, I want that water to kind of drip into it. Just like so. And we want all that beautiful pasta to go inside. I'm gonna set this aside. I'm gonna pop this just for a little bit of heat, and then I'm gonna go ahead and drop my squid into the boiling water. And what happens is the squid starts to curl up. And once it curls up, it's pretty much done. Perfect. Iyan patas, pare. So once the squid curls, you take it out because it's pretty much cooked. If you overcook squid, it becomes rubber bands and it's not really good to eat. Okay. Oh, yeah, bro. To let it kind of get a little bit more thicker. Okay. So I'm happy with that. My pasta is almost done. So that's why I pre-prepped everything. I have my beautiful squid here. I have my garnish ready. I'm going to add my pasta to a plate. Beautiful. All right. And we're just going to toss it straight onto the plate. I should say plate it straight onto the plate. Now with this pasta, there's no second chance. Wherever you drop it, that's where it's going to be, because you're going to leave beautiful little ink lines everywhere and it really looks bad. So just be confident in where you're going to drop it and let it fall. Don't sweat the little things. Right. So here I have a beautiful plate of pasta. Grab some spoons. I'm going to drop little cherry tomatoes wherever they fall that we just pan seared in a pan. Thanks for that, Ian. And I like putting odd numbers on my plate. So if it's 5, it's 5. Even kind of looks weird. I'm going to add some beautiful roasted garlic. And I think that the garlic can add a little bit more flavor, so I'll put a bit more. So I have 7. Then I have my lovely squid. So people knows that it's a squid pasta. And again, I don't really care where it falls. I keep it extremely simple, extremely light. And that kind of got dirty, so I'm going to remove that one. So you have to kind of be confident in where it falls. All right. So here we have an extremely simple adobong pusit pasta. We have roasted garlic, some seared cherry tomatoes, and some squid. So it's going to be extremely good. People know that there's squid in there, and you can taste it with every bite. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and set this down, and I'm going to go ahead and plate up the pampano. Okay, so my pasta is done. I'll clean up my area, and my fish should be ready. Ian, can you grab the fish? So the beauty about this is it's all about timing. You have to make sure your pasta's ready. You can do them both in one day, or you can just do it one at a time. How does that look? Oh, look at that beautiful fish. So we add the butter just to make sure that it doesn't come up and it doesn't stick to the fish. The most important thing is you have to check if the potatoes are done. So the best way to do it is just ram it with a fork. And if it goes in nice and it's nice and soft inside, it doesn't give any resistance, you know that the potatoes are cooked. Now my fish, the best way to do it is just put your fork in the center and pull away, and it should be all the way white through and through. If you see any opaque parts that look kind of like jelly, then you know that the fish is not cooked yet. But this is a perfectly cooked fish. It is kind of moist, or it's still very, very moist, and it's still very, very hot. So I'm just going to add a little bit more garnish, and I'm gonna serve it straight onto this Pyrex dish. Can I have some tarragon, bro? It just smells fantastic. I'm gonna give the bottom a really quick taste. So I do like the potatoes. Look at that beautiful color. Man, this is really good. Oh, hot. And again, with the tarragon, you just kind of pull it apart, give it a break, let it fall onto your bottom area where your bed is, and that's just going to give it a whole nother lift of aroma. So right away, the tarragon smell is coming right through, and that's it. So this is our baked fish, our baked pampano with roasted potatoes. And it's a meal that will serve, I would say, 4 people easily. So we have the baked fish here. And again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in and staying till the end. So if you want to make these recipes, please check out our web store. It's www.globalpacific.store. If you want to go to the store and buy the ingredient, the yamamori, you get it from In Luzon All Day Supermarket, Best Value Factory Outlet, Johnny Supermarket, My Mima's House of Ingredients. If you're in the Visayas, please get it at New Yan Yan's Commercial and Gaisano Supermarket. In Mindanao, you get it from NCCC Supermarket, Rafsky Cakes and Bakery, and Gaisano Supermarket. So please hit those places up, buy the ingredients, try these recipes out. It's going to be extremely fun, and I promise you, you're going to love it. Again, I'm Chef Bruce, and thank you so much for tuning in. This has been A Taste of Home, Season 2.